Hey guys, welcome back. This is lesson 2, part 2. And in this lesson, we've already made our coffee cup. We're going to add the steam, we're going to add this background design, and we're going to add some text. So let's get started. All right, open up your project from yesterday, and you should be at the same point that I am right now with a coffee cup. What we're going to do first is to go ahead and group this together so that everything is on the same layer. And to do that, we're going to need to grab our selection tool, and then we're going to select all of the shapes that make up the coffee cup, and we're going to go up to modify, and we're going to go to group. Notice that it's Command G, which is the same shortcut that you'll find in Illustrator. Okay, so now everything is on the same grouping together, and what we want to do is if we want, I got distracted for a second. If you want to change any part of the cup, you're just going to double click the group to edit it. So if we double click it, you can then turn around and edit it. Everything else kind of dims around it. This is the same as Illustrator if you're going to go into isolation mode and to double click something and to work on it there. So to get out of that, we can just double click an empty part of the stage and it'll get rid of it and we'll get out of it. Okay, so next up is we're going to go ahead and add like our coffee aroma or the steam that'll come out of it, and we're going to draw it. So in the drawing section of your toolbar, you want to select your pencil tool, which is right here. Notice that down below it gives you some options. This is your drawing mode, and this is your pencil mode. So for this one, we want to select the smooth from the pencil mode. You can also draw with like straight lines, or you can do kind of an ink. Those are the options given for the pencil. So we're going to select the smooth pencil line, and we want to, sorry, I'm reading as I do this. We want to check in our properties panel to select a dark brown color. So if we're going over to properties and we're over here, we can see that here's our dark brown color. We can change it, the opacity. So you would say opacity if you were in Photoshop or if you were in Illustrator. In Animate, it's called alpha. So just to add things a little bit more confusing, it's the same thing, but it just changes it a little bit. We want to change the alpha down to about 50%. So I'm just going to type in 50 and hit return. And that means that whatever I draw at this point is going to be lighter. And you can choose any kind of brown color that you want. I'm going to choose maybe like right here is a good color. Okay. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is to adjust our stroke and the stroke size and the width of it. So normally that would pop up here. For some reason at the moment mine's not, but if I go ahead and draw it, it does pop up. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust it since I've drawn it, and then I'll get rid of the stroke I made later. So for the stroke size, we want to enter a size of 15. You can just drag it up, or you could type it in. It's 15.15 is fine, it doesn't matter. For the stroke style, we could do solid. So this is, if you hover over it, it'll tell you which one it is. Let's choose solid. And then for the width, let's take and do width profile 2. Okay, so now we've got a width that's a little unpredictable, not as even. We've got a solid style, and we've got a stroke of 15. Our color is a dark brown, and we adjusted it so it's not completely opaque. We brought down a little bit so that it's 50%. All right, for the alpha value. Okay, so here we go. Now we're ready to go ahead and draw. So when you're ready, we're just going to do a couple little strokes to look like it's steam. So just play around with it, have fun. You guys are just practicing as it is. There we go. Now you'll notice that mine popped up in the back, and that's because it's on the same layer as the coffee cup. So something I meant to tell you guys to do, I'm going to undo this, is to add a new layer first. So just new layer, and to undo it's Command Z, just like it is in Illustrator and in Photoshop. Command Z will undo. Okay, so on the new layer, I want to do coffee, steam. I misspelled coffee. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my pencil. Everything's still set up the way I have it before. So now it should be on top, and I can go ahead and draw my coffee aroma. Okay, so now I have my steam coming out, and I'm going to move on, show you how you guys can adjust that if you're ready. Okay, so this tool right here is called the width tool, and if you click it, it will allow you to adjust the width. I'm going to zoom in a little so you guys can see. And you may like your coffee aroma just fine, but if you wanted to adjust the width, you could play around with it here. Have fun, there's no right or wrong. You guys are just practicing, but you can kind of, that looks really skinny. That's too skinny for a coffee steam. But you can add anchor points, you can adjust it, you can play around with it. Just have a good time until you get your steam the way you want it to be. All right, let's talk swatches really quickly. Swatches are little sections of color. This is what this is. What we're gonna do next is to go ahead and save our coffee steam as a swatch of color. So it's called a tag swatch. So in your swatch panel, when you select something and you add it to it and then you save it, it's gonna be called a tag swatch. Okay, so we're gonna first click on, I'm gonna use the selection tool and click on one of the coffee things, and then I'm going to come over here to my swatches panel, which, by the way, if that wasn't closed, you would just go to window and you would go down to swatches to open it up. Okay, so I'm going to click on this and I'm going to come over to this icon right here, which is create a new swatch. And as I click on it, you can see that it made a swatch and it made it the exact same alpha, or otherwise known as transparency, opaqueness here. So now I can go ahead and save this as a tagged swatch. To save it as a tag swatch, we're just going to click on this, and if you hover, it tells you what each of these is. Like, this is to create a new folder, this is to create a new swatch, trash can. So if we click convert to a tag swatch, what we're going to do is go ahead and name it. Let's name it coffee steam, and okay. And so now it's going to save this as a tag swatch. So as we open up our swatches panel and we want to reuse this color, it's already saved for us. Okay, so we're going to use the selection tool and we're going to click every coffee whisk above the mug. So I'm going to click off here first. I've got this one open, and then hold down the shift key just to select everything. Okay. By using your selection tool and selecting the wisps like this, and then coming into your tagged swatches and clicking on your tag swatch, you're now linking these two together. And so let's say that you wanted to change the color of this steam and you've already linked the two together. You can come in here and you can, and notice that it's not selected at this point. I can come over to the tag swatches, and let's say I just want to change the brown to be a little darker. And so here's my old color, here's my new color. If I click OK, it will change it on here as well. And so that's kind of the difference, or the point of having a tag swatch and linking it to the object that you have on your file, that if you want to change the color of everything, you can go over to your tag swatch, click it, and it easily changes everything that's been tagged with it. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is to use the selection tool, and we're going to push and pull on the edges of the shapes to make curves. So let's go into Insert Timeline Layer. And first I'm going to actually close out of my swatches so it's out of the way. Insert Timeline Layer. And that is just a longer way of doing the shortcut of just doing a new layer. It does place it on top. And let's just call it Dark Brown Wave. So I'm going to double click it and call it Dark Brown Wave. All right. And we're going to take this layer and we want it to be all the way on the bottom because we want it to be behind the coffee cup. So now the coffee steam is on the top, the coffee cup, and then the dark brown wave. All right, guys, we're next going to use the pen tool to draw the background shape. We're going to start drawing these freeform shapes in the background. We're going to draw a total of 3 of them and just have some fun with it. So coming over to the pen tool, you're going to choose your style as hairline, and you want to choose your width as uniform. And let's go ahead and do, if we click on the color, let's do a fill color of a dark brown, but let's make that alpha 100. And that is, again, equal to opacity. So coming over here now using the pen tool, it's very much like Illustrator. We would like, if you study this for a while, we want to make this look a little curvy here and there. So to curve, just like in Illustrator, when you use the pen tool, you click and hold without releasing the mouse, and that will give you a curve. So coming over here, I'm just going to start on the left-hand side. I'm going to have fun. If I click and hold, it gives me a little bit of a curve. I'm just gonna kind of play around with it, making it a little curvy here and there. Come in and curve down. And when you get to the end, just connect it to the very first one that you did. See that little circle that appears? It now connects it, and we can now fill it with a color. So let's go over to the paint bucket tool. We've got a dark brown, and we can just click on our shape, and we now have our wave. Okay, let's talk about selection tool and the sub selection tool in Animate. All right, zooming in, let's look at the selection tool. So the selection tool, if you remember, if you come over parts of it and you get that little arc, it will allow you to curve. This works much faster than in Illustrator, so I really like this aspect. It takes little sections that you've drawn and it'll allow you to adjust it. Now, the sub selection tool, on the other hand, if you click, will give you the anchor points, and you can then individually adjust each anchor point. So the selection tool does big chunks at a time. The sub selection will do individual anchor points. So take a moment and just click and adjust to make sure you get your wave the way you want it to be. Also, I just want to mention under the pen tool, if you click and hold, you can see that there's the add anchor points or delete anchor points or convert anchor points, very similar to Illustrator. So if I was going to get rid of an anchor point at this point, like the delete anchor points, I could click it and I could just click on one and get rid of it and adjust it that way. All right, so take a moment to adjust yours, pause this, and come back when you're done. All right, we're going to come on and we're going to select this shape. We're going to copy it, paste it, put it on its own layer, and we're going to change the alpha, also the opacity, known as opacity, down, and we're going to change the color a little bit. So it's similar but a little different. So we have it selected. We're going to go to Edit, Copy, or you could do Command C, and we're going to do Insert, Timeline, and Layer. So this is going to make it on its own layer. I'm going to double click here and name it Light Brown Wave, and that is on top of the dark brown wave. I'm going to adjust my layers for a second because somehow I must not have gotten it all the way to the bottom. I want the dark brown on the bottom, the light brown right above that, then the coffee cup, then the steam. So here I have my light brown layer. I'm going to make sure I'm on that, and then I'm going to choose Edit, and I'm going to choose Paste in Place. And so now it's actually kind of pasted it over top where the other one was, which is fine. We can use the selection tool to move it, or we can use the up and down arrow keys to adjust it. We want to kind of just play a little bit so that it isn't exactly the same as the one above it. All right, I'm going to change as my fill color, since it's selected, I'm going to change a little bit lighter of a brown, and I want my alpha to go down to maybe like 50%. And enter or return. And if I click off of it, I can see I didn't get mine adjusted as much as I wanted. Let me change it. Let's do, I'm going to open the color palette, going by Windows, and I'm just going to choose color. And I want to adjust this. So I'm going to come over here to what's called the hex. I'm going to highlight this, and let's do CC6666. And I want to click return. And in my alpha, I want to do 50%. Enter. Okay. So now I've got it adjusted a little bit. You can see that because the alpha is adjusted, it means that it's partially see-through. So it was opaque, meaning completely solid, and now it's half of it is see-through. 50% of it has now been reduced to be more transparent. So it gives this overall layered effect or feel to it. All right, let's go ahead and add a new layer, and we're going to put a background behind our piece. So let's click Create Layer. I'm going to call it Background. Whoops. Double click on it, call it Background. And I'm going to drag this layer all the way to the bottom. And let's use our rectangle tool. I'm going to come in. I'm going to make my color, somewhat of like a tan. I want to be a little bit darker of a tan, maybe like this. You can have fun with it, pick whatever you want. I'll do no stroke. And I just want to check to make sure that my alpha is at 100%, which it is. And again, maybe like this color. Okay, so I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to draw this shape behind it so it fills it completely. And I do want to use the transform tool just to adjust it a little bit. There we go, because I didn't have it quite large enough. Okay, so now if I click off of it, I can see the color. I don't really like the color of this one, so I'm just going to play around with it till I found a color that I like a little bit better. Maybe that. It's hard to tell when it's selected because it gives you this kind of transparent, like half preview, and it doesn't look exactly like what it's going to look like when you do finally change it. So I'm going to play with it just a little bit more. Okay. There, we'll go with that. Okay, so I have my coffee cup and I have these swirls in the background. If you look at what we've got so far, we're pretty much matching up. We're getting ready to add our shadows and then we're going to add text and then we'll be done. So let's come in here and get going. So on your layers, you should have coffee steam, coffee cup, light brown wave, dark brown wave, and your background. All right, let's continue on with adding our shadows. We're going to add 2 new layers. You can do insert timeline layer, or you can also come up here and just do the new layer symbol. I'm going to click new layer and I'm going to call it shadow. And then I'm going to do another one and I'm going to double click it and call it big shadow. As far as layer order goes, I would like the big shadow to be below the shadow and both of these above the background. Okay, I'm going to move my coffee mug over just so it matches what is online. Whoops. I'm going to also select my steam in here. Okay. Whoops. And I'm going to go up to modify and group, or Command G, just to make sure that it's all grouped together, which it should be now. Nope, still not. It did my steam, but it did not do that. Command G to group together. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move this over so it matches the illustration that we're studying to make sure that we have it right. And we're going to add our shadows. So I'm going to click on the shadow layer, and that's going to draw a shadow underneath the coffee mug. So I'm going to select the oval tool. And as far as the fill goes, I'm going to come up here and click this, delete it, and let's do 663300, which is a dark brown color, and let's make our alpha 15%. Whoops, that's very tricky on there. I find that it always kind of slides away from me. So 66330 is a very light shadow. We're going to hit enter, and then we have our oval that we're going to draw. So let's come over here right underneath the coffee mug, and we're just going to select an oval and do it right about here. Whoops, you guys can see that I did not adjust my settings over here. So let's fix your settings first. All I need to do is to click no stroke on my settings up here. My fill is fine, but the stroke I just need to turn off. Okay, so now I'm going to turn around and add the shadow right underneath my coffee cup. And I want it to be sort of just like this. That's going to give us a little bit of depth. If I wanted to adjust it, I could select it or use the freeform tool to select it and go ahead and shift it out. I think I want to make mine a little bit longer, just about like this. Perfect. And click off of it. So now I have a shadow, and I want to use the same color, but I want to do a really large oval that's going to go off of the stage, and I'm going to have it start right about here. I need to pull it up a little bit, but I'll draw it and then I'll adjust it. So I drew it and now I'm going to adjust it up right about here. Okay, so for mine, I need to adjust, let's see, background, big shadow. I drew it on the wrong layer, so I'm going to delete it real quick. or Command Z actually to undo everything. It's gonna let me take it off. There we go. Okay, I need to click on the big shadow layer first, go over to the oval. I have no stroke. I have my fill set to the color that I want it to be set, and now I should be able to go ahead and draw the oval. And that's just about right there. And I can click on this and adjust it and move it any way that I want it to be. All right, so we now have our shadow from our coffee cup, and we also have the shadow that's overlaying the rest of it. We have our wavy background design, and we have our coffee cup. So next thing we're gonna do is to go ahead and add some letters. We are gonna hand draw the Mug's Coffee next. So we're gonna come over to the brush. Now you have the paintbrush tool and then you have the brush tool. For now, we're gonna select the paintbrush tool and we're gonna do a new layer. So we're gonna go to new layer down here and double click it, and we're gonna call it chalk. And this is where we're gonna draw our name of the cafe. So let's select it and we're gonna bring it all the way to the top because it's gonna be on top of everything else. And so we want to do our paintbrush tool. For our color in this, let's go ahead and choose maybe like something bright. So maybe a yellow. You can pick whatever you want. It's just playing around. It's okay if it's a little different. And then we want a stroke size of 15, which we have. It bugs me that mine says 15.15, so I'm just going to adjust it so it's an even 15. And this should give us a pretty good like thickness for the cafe lettering. All right, so the next we got to do the brush style. So we're going to choose the library down here. Let's see, brush library. And you see that you have options: arrows, artistic, decorative, basic, you have patterns, you have all kinds of things. We're going to go into artistic and choose the chalk and charcoal option. And we're going to go to the charcoal thick brush. So let's scroll down right there. Okay, that's a good one for here. And then it's going to be added. If I double click it, you can see that it's popped up here, and we now can access it pretty easily, and it's active. So now next to the coffee mug, we're just going to have fun, and we're going to write the name of our cafe, which is Mug's Coffee. And let me close this out. And so very neatly, but just have fun with it. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and hand do it. Just want to double check it. Mug's Coffee. Okay. Now, if you want to adjust anything, they are individually adjustable. So you can double click on each one, move it around. Let me double click off of that. Now I noticed on mine that mine's not very vibrant, and that's because I forgot to change the alpha to 100%. So I'm going to pause this, get rid of mine, redo it because it bothers me that it's light and not vibrant. And then I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I'm back. So we're going to go ahead and make this decorative banner above it. And we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to bring that layer above all the others, and we're going to call it border. All right, so on this layer, we're gonna go ahead and add our checkered pattern. So we're gonna select the line tool, which is right here. And we're gonna click on the stroke color. And you can see here that you could choose any color that you want, but we want to be able to make it a pattern. So we're gonna come down here in the properties panel. Let me just move this out of the way. And we're going to go to the brush library next to style. We're going to click here. And if you remember, we've got some decorative pieces that come along. You've got all kinds of options, but under pattern brushes, we're going to go to borders, and we're going to choose, let's see. We could do a checkered pattern or we could change it up. You can click underneath all of these. We're gonna do the dashed square 1.3 right here. So we double click it, that is now selected. And as we draw a line across the top, it becomes this checkered pattern style. So just click on one side and drag all the way over. Oh, if you notice mine is twisted, which is actually kind of cool. It's because I didn't adjust this again. So if I click over here and I do a uniform, I can click and drag and make it. That was kind of fun to have it twisted. So part of me wants to leave it like that, but you can make this whatever color you want, guys. Just play around with it. We're just testing it. In this, it's a dark brown. I'm leaving mine bright yellow. Really just have fun. You're just learning some of the tools and going along with it. All right. There we go. So I now have the border around the mug's coffee. Next thing that we're going to do is to add some more text, and we're pretty much done. Okay, one other thing I want to mention to you guys, which is kind of cool that Animate has, is this option right here to rotate your whole canvas. So it doesn't just rotate the canvas, it rotates it as if you were drawing it in real life and you were twisting your paper. So if you turn on the rotation tool, you can click on your stage and you can then rotate it so that if you wanted to draw something, let me find it. Where did it go? I zoomed out. There we go. So if you wanted to draw something and you wanted to focus on this area, all you'd have to do is click this center stage button and it turns it right back again. So I just wanted to do that as a side note because I think that's kind of handy and that's something that you guys might find as a fun option. All right. I have in this process lost my borders. I don't know what happened to them as I was just showing you guys that. So I must have accidentally deleted my borders. Let me fix them and I will come right back. All right, we're gonna create another layer, double click it, and we're gonna call this one text. Okay, and we are now gonna go ahead and add, we're gonna choose the text tool right here, and we're gonna choose dynamic text from the drop down. Okay, so this is gonna allow us to draw a text box that we're going to add our text into. So we're just going to draw out a text box in the shape of where we want this to go. You can adjust this layer later. All right. And we're going to end it over just past where it says coffee on the end. And let's type taste the difference. Okay. So this does not show up very well. It doesn't fit the text. We need to edit it a little bit. So we're going to choose the selection tool. I'm going to select this box and our text. And we're going to add some smaller text on the stage in just a minute that says coffee, pastries, and free Wi-Fi. So I'm going to select this text box. All right, to edit this text, I'm going to go back to my text tool. I'm going to come up and select and highlight it. I can then adjust it from here. Now, there's something called add web fonts, and I'm not sure right now if you guys can do that because I'm at home making this tutorial and I'm not sure if school's going to let you, but there's Adobe fonts and Google fonts. You can play around with this if you want a little bit. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to pick a font from here, but if you want to investigate tomorrow and see if it will actually allow you to log in and or maybe hopefully not log in and click fonts from here, these are some options as well. I'm just going to change my size larger and see what happens. And play around with it. So go ahead and you want to get it to look like this. Taste the difference, coffee, pastries, free Wi-Fi. So play around with this a little bit. You've got taste the difference, change your color. You can change your font size if you want to, or I mean your actual font if you want to. Just pick it. You don't have to stick to one that's exactly the same as mine. You can adjust your text box and however you need it to be to get it to fit. When you're all, pause me for a minute and then go ahead and do that and come on back when you're done.